Are you ready for a show that talks sports from the fans' point of view?
We've seen Michael Jordan score 37 points a game in his era. How many could he score in today's NBA?
There's not a player out there who I'd rather have than LeBron James.
Are you ready for a show that isn't afraid to challenge anyone when it comes to sports? If Adam Silver really wanted to fix tanking in the NBA, he would stop rewarding teams by giving them the best chance to win the draft lottery.
I mean, how many times will Roger Goodell drop the ball on handling domestic violence in the NFL?
Look, athletes have every right to talk politics, but if the fans stop tuning in, that's their right.
Then you're ready for Talk Back, a podcast where two fans debate the media narrative and discuss the world of sports as we see it.
Welcome to the show.
Welcome back to another edition of Talk Back. It's episode 215 in season 2. I'm in the studio tonight. This is Eric Nesbit, one of your hosts, and our other host and director of content, Justin Gay, is on location in his studio tonight because he's getting ready for a trip with his daughter for a little father-daughter time down to the land of magic. That's right, Orlando, Florida, to go to Disney World. Justin, are you pretty excited about that?
Yeah, I am. This is a surprise trip for her. She has no idea. She just knows she's going somewhere special. Dad only. So dad and a daughter going to do this. So we'll see how this works. But I thought it was a good idea to go ahead and record the podcast prior to leaving because I'm probably going to be so tired after coming back that I'm going to be pretty useless if I was trying to record something with you then.
Well, I appreciate you catching up on Ringer.com. Thank you to the folks at Ringer.com for hooking us up with the software necessary to do these remote podcasts. And Justin, it's been very popular the past few weeks with these NFL division previews. This week, we're rolling right into the NFC South in segment 1. Then we'll head over to a division that I don't think either one of us are excited to talk about, the NFC West, but we do have to stay with the program and hit that division. But we'll leave time, hopefully, at the end of the episode for Talkworthy, a big trade between the Oakland Raiders and the Chicago Bears with Khalil Mack. So, Justin, I know you want to at least hit on that, and if we have time, a couple other things. So that is what's on tap for episode 215 of Talk Back. Thank you for listening. We'll be back after this.
Welcome back, and it is the final installment of our NFL preview series. And tonight, it'll be the NFC South and the NFC West. Let's start in the NFC South. Again, if you're one of the new listeners to the podcast, we appreciate you listening. We've picked up a lot of new listeners over the past few weeks, Eric. Every time you call me and text me the numbers that have come in on our downloads, it's pretty exciting to see how many new listeners we are getting. So Eric and I like to break down the divisions. We basically come up with one big question about the teams, and then we'll take the over-under line that Vegas has set, and we debate if we like over-under. Sometimes Vegas gives us a flat number with no half point in there, so we may push at that point as well. So let's talk about the first team on the docket. That is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They are coming off of a 5-11 season last year. This was a team that last summer was on Hard Knocks, and boy, there was a ton of momentum that Jameis Winston was going to have a breakout year, and this Bucs team was going to really challenge for this division, and they fell well short of that number, probably up there with the Raiders and Giants as maybe the most disappointing team in the NFL. Once again, we're in the offseason, and Jameis Winston has himself in hot water, and it's not for things on the field. It's more off the field issues for a player that had a ton of them coming out of Florida State. There's a lot of talk, Eric, that ownership is not real thrilled with Jameis Winston or head coach Dirk Cutter. Again, this is a team that is 5-11. We're talking about them first. That means Vegas doesn't have a lot of expectations for this team, and this is a division chock full of talent. So, Eric, if things don't go right again and Tampa struggles, is it time to pull the plug on the Jameis Winston experiment and maybe Dirk Cutter as well?
Yeah, Justin, you'd have to believe so, because some of these guys come out of college with a lot of promise, and yet there's just these off-the-field things that give you enough concern to not be sure if you want to build a franchise around them. I feel like Tampa Bay has actually been in that mindset the past couple of years. I mean, they've looked at Mike Glennon, they've got Ryan Fitzpatrick. You feel like they're doing better than B-level backups in some of these years because they're not sure what Winston's going to be or not be, and you feel like they've kind of been playing around with what they're going to do. Now, certainly Glennon wasn't the answer. I don't think Fitzpatrick is any long-term answer either, as many NFL teams didn't believe that. But, Justin, as your question states, I don't think Jameis Winston is the answer either. There just comes a point where, whether it's politics or sports or even at our jobs and other things, where that old saying, if there's smoke, there's fire, with Jameis Winston right from his Florida State days and then on into the NFL, it's just little things here and there. And then, of course, the big things like the alleged sexual misconducts and things like that. And you just think, okay, if you're not performing on the field, certainly he wasn't getting enough out of Mike Evans and their relationship the past few years. If you're not going to be at that level on the field, it's like we've talked about with other guys, Johnny Manziel's and other guys in the past. They're not going to put up with it outside of the locker room either, because that benefit to them on the football field and winning isn't worth it. And like you said, with a 5-11 record last year, Jameis Winston's not worth it if he can't get you to a winning record and be better than all of the things that he's dealing with in the news.
No, I totally agree. I thought last year was his year where it was sort of a make or break year for him, and he just didn't perform that well. And as a team, I know there was issues on the team, but we've seen that good quarterbacks, good to excellent quarterbacks, can overcome a lot of deficiencies on their team and on their roster. And he simply didn't do it. Once again, it's off the field issues. And you start looking at the upper echelon quarterbacks in this league, Brady, Breeze, Rodgers. These guys don't have themselves in issues where they're fondling Uber drivers or whatever Jameis Winston was involved in, and yelling expletives on a table in a cafeteria and stealing crabs out of a supermarket. They just don't have that stuff attached to him. This guy does. I don't see how you can take him as a leader when he constantly doesn't do the things that he needs to do to be a leader. So that's my concern with him, is I just don't know that he's the leader that we sort of believe that he is. That's sort of the problem I have with him. And I think this team is starting to worry about that as well, of, we've got a problem here. We've got a quarterback that we really can't trust, not only on the field, because Jameis does a lot of dumb stuff on the field still, throwing the ball left-handed and throwing it into triple coverage and just throwing it up in the air and just senseless turnovers, but now off the field as well, that you have to constantly worry about our quarterback. This is stuff that you think about with receivers and cornerbacks, like you brought up with Justin Blackmon, some of these other guys that have had issues and you worry about off the field, but this is your quarterback. This is a guy that's eventually going to command a huge salary. Tampa's got to decide what direction to go with it, and I just don't see how they can feel comfortable to go with him. Eric Vegas doesn't have a lot of hope in this team either. Again, we're talking about a team that's down at the bottom. Vegas thinks they will be better, though, than they were last year. They have their number at 6.5. So what are you thinking here for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
This may be the second easiest one of the night, because I don't see it, Justin. I've got to take the under. I look at their schedule, and I maybe get to 4 or 5 if you win a couple of coin flips. But here's the problem, and you'll talk about this, I know, as you go up through the division. This NFC South division, they pull the NFC East and the AFC North. Well, we've already talked about in the last couple weeks on this show that we believe both of those divisions are strong. Even the AFC North, where they're going to have up-and-coming teams like Cleveland, could be surprise games against a team that's really not sure what their identity is, like Tampa Bay. This Tampa Bay team is going to get knocked in the mouth right from the start of the season. They've got to go to New Orleans to play on September 9th. So week 1, I think that's a loss. And we're not going to go through their schedule. We just don't have the time for that on this show. But I'm doing it right now for the beginning of Tampa Bay's schedule to prove a point. They're going to go to New Orleans. They're going to lose. Then they've got Philly and Pittsburgh at home. Too bad. They're going to lose both of those. Then they've got to go to Chicago, which I've already been on record as saying I think that's going to be a tough game for them because Chicago's up and coming. Then they've got an early bye. just like I talked about last week, early buys are not my favorite because you don't get a lot of time into your season before you have to regather yourself and then go play another 12 games. So I think this Tampa Bay team could be 0-4 right at the bye, if not 1-3. Then guess what? You come back from the bye, you get to go play the Atlanta Falcons. Great, good for you. Then you're going to have in the rest of your season games in Carolina, in the Meadowlands against the Giants, in Dallas against Dallas. I mean, Justin, I'm sorry, I'm taking the under at maybe even 5-11 again. I don't see how they even think about getting to 7 wins.
No, I'm right there with you. I can't put them over. And I think part of the reason for this question is, remember, Jameis Winston is suspended the first 3 games of this season. And this is not an easy schedule. Number one, it's not an easy division. It's hard to look at their schedule and feel confident that they're going to be able to win more than maybe 1 or 2 games in their division. And that's probably their ceiling. They could easily go 0-6 in the division. And then again, you talked about it, the NFC East, they're not going to be easy. The AFC North, there may be a few games in there. And then again, having a last place schedule, they may get some. But yeah, I think 5 it sounds pretty good for them. And if they are at 5, they're going to be right there with a very high draft pick, where they're going to have to make a decision at quarterback. Do they go ahead and draft someone else and let Jameis go versus having to work out contract details that are going to be coming up and what they want to do with him? So, yeah, I don't see how this team gets to 6.5. I think Vegas is a little high on them, and I really don't get it because I just don't see where they're going to get those wins at. So let's go to team number 2 here in the NFC South, and it gets pretty tight up here at the top of the NFC South, and we're talking about the Carolina Panthers. They won 11 games last year. We talked about this team, it felt like weekly, of just the ups and downs and the inconsistencies in Cam Newton's game. They bring in Norv Turner as the offensive coordinator, and aside from Cam Newton yelling at some kids that went viral, it was a pretty quiet offseason for Carolina. So the big talk out of Carolina and their camp has been just Cam's focus on accuracy. And that seems to be something that Norv Turner has wanted to come in and try to fix, which obviously is a big issue with Cam's game. So, Eric, if Cam can figure out his accuracy and become a more accurate quarterback and get into the mid-60s, where kind of that's where the upper echelon quarterbacks are in this league, if he can do that, can he find more consistency this year and push this team back into the playoffs and double-digit wins?
As much as I don't really like Cam Newton as an individual for some of the things that we see at press conferences and some of the attitudes he has toward others, I love watching Cam Newton play football. He is an amazing specimen, just an athlete through and through. And so I find myself watching Carolina games just to see what Cam Newton's going to do. But I think you hit the nail on the head when you're talking about accuracy, because if he were as accurate as a Tom Brady or as an Aaron Rodgers or as a top echelon quarterback with the physical skills that he has with running the ball, he would be an unbelievably transcendental player. I mean, just year in and year out, there's no doubt about it. But his attitude gets in the way and his accuracy gets in the way. So the thing about Carolina is you're going to have some questions with who he's throwing to. I think you need Greg Olsen healthy all year for this team. I think that's a huge one. I think you've got to see McCaffrey take the next step out of the backfield to help Cam out, especially have another weapon to throw to in the flat or in short routes. That's going to open up some opportunities for the Panthers. But you've seen in the past couple years, like with Kelvin Benjamin and not sure what to do, with some of their pieces, and, putting Funches in number 1. I'm not in love with their strategy at wide receiver. And I feel like this is a team that might be ready to go to that 12-4 or 13-3 level again if they had all of the pieces on offense that they need. But to answer your question, Cam Newton's one of my favorite players, and I think if he can get his accuracy under control, this is a team that, although Vegas has them 3rd, and we'll talk in a minute about over and under, this is a team that I can see being a little bit of a surprise as it goes with Cam Newton's success. If he's successful, this team is successful. If he's not, this is one of those teams that could be more of a 3rd or 4th place team in this division and surprise people being lower than what they thought.
Well, in fairness, Vegas has a logjam at the top of this division. So just because Carolina is 3rd doesn't mean that Vegas necessarily thinks that they're going to be a 3rd place team. Because again, this is a very tough division. We saw it last year. You had 2 teams winning 11 games, 1 team winning 10 games. All 3 of them got into the playoffs, and 2 of these teams actually won games in the playoffs. So Carolina was the first team out. So thus they get number 3 on my list here based on the tie that they have with the team we'll talk about next. But yeah, I think what Cam has done is he's always been able to recently to find ways to win games when it doesn't seem like he has a lot of talent around him. And they went out, they drafted DJ Moore. They tried to get him another weapon. They signed CJ Anderson.